and welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon and I am a relationship expert, international speaker and best-selling author of Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching TV or the news, on social media, the perception given to people is wrong, and my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people actually go through or think or do, as opposed to creating expectations of things that don't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. And today we have Collette Gee, and we're going to talk about interracial marriage. So hi, Collette.
Sophie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. Thank you for coming on. So tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Well, I am a dating and relationship expert, and I work with men and women to help them create and sustain healthy, meaningful romantic relationships. And I live in Los Angeles. I have been traveling around the world with my husband. I've been doing lots of workshops and trainings to help people with their relationships. I'm an author, and now I'm hanging out in England, and it's been great. So that's a little about me.
Okay, good. So can you tell us a bit about your history in terms of relationships? Obviously, I've met you, so I know it's not your first marriage, but people don't know that. So can you tell us a little bit about you in that way and how you've come to your current marriage and all the stuff, basically?
Right. So I have, this is my fourth marriage, and that sounds like a lot. I feel like I'm competing with Elizabeth Taylor. Obviously, I believe in love.
Do you know, funny you should say that about fourth, right? There was a chap I knew, and when we got to his funeral, which is not funny, but either way, and you know how they say stuff about the person at a funeral? And they said, oh, blah, 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 was married 6 times. And we were all like, 6 times, really? And he was the quietest person. And we never thought, really, how you got married 6 times? You know?
Right. So, this is my last and final marriage. And trust me, I didn't say that after the other 3, but I'm saying that now. So, my first 2 marriages were extremely unhealthy, abusive relationships, which is why those relationships came to an end. My third marriage, we just grew apart. And this marriage has been the most perfect marriage and relationship, as if I'm in a relationship with my absolute best friend, which I am. He's my best friend. And we weren't best friends first, but we are now. And it's just been great. And our relationship, he's Irish predominantly. I would say you might as well just say he's Irish, even though he was born in the United States, but he did one of those ancestry.com DNA test, and he found that he has mostly like Viking and Irish, but he's predominantly Irish. And I am African descent. I'm American and Blackfoot Indian. And so that's my genetic makeup, but we're both from America. And our relationship is just great.
Okay, so one of the first things I want to say, and I know this is a podcast, so people can't see what I'm just about to say, but it's how your eyes light up when you started talking about him. Actually, that's really nice. But obviously, if you're hearing this, you can't see it. Can you tell us, how did you meet?
So we were both volunteering for a cause that's very near and dear to my heart. We were volunteering for an organization in Los Angeles called Peace Over Violence. And it's a nonprofit organization. I was actually getting training. I was getting a certification through them for violence prevention. So I'm a certified violence prevention specialist,
Hmm.
and he was a volunteer instructor, and he had worked for them previously. So at the time when we met, we were both volunteering for an organization based on, a mission that's dear to both of us. And I saw his picture on the book at the of the curriculum. And then he came into the classroom and he was there to teach that day. And I gave him my business card. And I was like, oh my God, he's so handsome. And just his voice is so deep, and he's just so tall and just like, yeah. So, and then he's doing what I love. So I just thought this is
Yeah,
perfect.
it's just ticking all the boxes, isn't it? So, coming from two different backgrounds and from two different races, have you encountered any issues?
Yeah, we encounter lots of issues because, well, he looks a lot older than me because his hair is all white. I
Hmm.
color my hair jet black, so I would have a lot of gray if I let it go. We're both grandparents, but he looks older than me, and he is
And see, if
older.
I may say so myself, you look a lot younger anyway.
I look a lot younger than I am, so we get that first of all because of the age, right?
Hmm.
Then when you add on the fact that I'm, a woman of color, and he's, a Caucasian man, then we get those other looks, the other looks of like, oh, I bet she, and some people have said, oh, I bet you're using him. Oh, he's probably in a midlife crisis, and, or, oh, the why is he with that black girl look, that kind of stuff.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, obviously we just ignore them. It's their
Hmm.
problem. That's not my problem. It's their problem. And as long as their looks or their comments um, don't cause me like physical harm or affect my livelihood or my life, they can say whatever the hell they want.
And we were talking earlier offline about, dating in general and stuff. And we were having this conversation where you said that in terms of like, races, you found in your experience that for people who are dating, there are two categories, shall we call it, that are really discriminated against, and that's black women and Asian men. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Well, because I help men and women get into healthy relationships. Some of that I help with online dating or matchmaking. And so, one of the things, the tools that most people use is online dating websites or dating. And in order for my clients to have a good online presentation, I help them to create their online presentation. And sometimes I even manage their accounts by reaching out to prospects, answering questions and things like that, or scrolling through potential prospects for them. And if I'm looking for a woman, a Caucasian woman, it's endless on who is looking for her and
Hmm.
regarding men that are looking for her. If I'm looking for a woman of color, specifically black women, I literally will see from the men's side that they will put things on their profiles like, black women, please don't contact me. They'll literally write those things out, or they don't have that as an option as, for the races or of individuals that they're interested in. And even when I'm working with my female clients and I'm looking through my male clients and I'm looking at the female profiles, I notice that one of the boxes that's not ticked from women are Asian men.
Hmm.
So those are the two groups. And uh, you know, uh, black women that come to me for help, they struggle because the online dating apps and tools are not platforms that really work for them unless they fit into some type of stereotypical construct. I've had clients that say, well, I don't look like Beyonce or Halle Berry, so they're not
Hmm.
lighter skinned black women, or they're not, or, and even if they are, that's a box that's not actually ticked on the other side. So it would be rude to reach out knowing
Yeah.
that this people is not putting an option, doesn't have a black woman as an option that they're interested in.
And can
So
I just ask, just out of interest, are these, people we've been working with, are they in the States? Are they in different countries?
yeah, some of them are, most of them are in the States, but
Hmm.
some are in countries. And let me just tell you, I'm not a fan of online dating or dating apps because of the same thing. And we didn't have this in our offline discussion. Before I met my husband, I was using dating apps and online sites because I wanted to use it for information for my book, but also because I was looking myself like, what's this world all about?
Hmm.
And I noticed that men either asked me if I was a man. They,
Right.
pictures, I got asked that a lot. Or they were like, eHarmony was a dating website that said they couldn't find a match for me anywhere in the world,
Right.
which and or the dating sites, they didn't believe my profile was weird. I either was asked if I was a man or if I was a prostitute. So there was weird kind of feedback that I got, and I wondered if other women were getting that kind of feedback
Mm.
too. I thought, well, and then the two dates that I wound up showing up on from this online dating site, the guys were really intimidated by me, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you're like stunning. Oh my God, well, you're like taller, and like finding like these weird little faults. But it was extremely hard for me to meet anybody online. I was getting rejected. Like the moment if I reached out to somebody, they'd either block me or close it off. If I was on eHarmony, they'd send potential matches and then the person would close the match right away. And I didn't understand what was happening. And now that I'm doing it as a professional for other women and men, I noticed that I'm not even an option for these
Mm.
individuals. For as a Black woman, I would specifically stay away from online dating sites and things like that. And I don't push my clients to do that anyway, because while it's a tool, I think it's a tool that people become too dependent on and they
Yeah, I
don't go
agree
out
with that.
and action.
I think, it's a bit like looking for a job. You put your CV online. If you're looking for a relationship, you put your CV online by the mean of an online dating site. But I think people need to really go back to all traditional, just meeting people randomly and doing stuff and getting to know someone face to face, as a friend maybe first, and see if things grow. Or not, it's got its place, don't get me wrong. I know loads of people who've met in that way. But also know loads of people who've had, disasters. So, but anyway, we're diverting. So, have you found it difficult to adjust to certain things at times with you and your husband in terms of like, because it's a different culture, it's a different whatever? Have you had anything, to adjust to? Obviously, it's very different, but being French, there's been times where in relationships, or maybe I've not reacted in the same way because of my upbringing and a different, culture. Have you found that at all?
Between he and I, no,
Hmm.
because Frank he is a Black woman trapped inside of a white man's body.
Right, okay.
But he is, we have so much in common in regards to everything that our values, our beliefs, what we fight for, our mission, our life purpose. So when you're dealing with those core similarities, it's like the other things don't come up. Like we don't have like, white and Black issues because we don't see each other in white and Black. I respect him for who he is culturally, and he really respects me for who I am culturally, but we are from a similar culture, I would say, because of those things. So no. I mean, in terms of like, I do have to have conversations with him about Black woman's hair, like,
Yes.
oh,
Explain how it works.
explain how all this works. And I mean, he has, I'm sure, seen things that he never thought he would see when it comes to the world of a Black woman and her hair.
Hmm.
But he was married to a Black woman before me.
Okay.
but she didn't let him in on all these little secrets that I've let him in on. So yeah, yeah.
And do you think, obviously, in your relationship, there hasn't been that difficulty in adjusting to anything, but do you think that there are certain things that potentially in an interracial marriage there could be not necessarily difficulties, but things to adjust to that people could struggle with because it's different?
Well, because of our relationship, this raised these questions that you raised came up for me as well, as I truly think that people should just be in relationships with people they love, because when you close your eyes and you think about um, all the
Emotions and
components of love, love does not have a color, a
oh, a
size,
face even.
things, those components. So my husband and I wrote a book that we'll be releasing called Practical Advice for Interracial Dating and Relationships. And we interviewed 7 different people from different races and cultures to see what were the differences and what were the similarities and what were some of the challenges and what were some of the things that came up. And while I can totally see some of the challenges being like having family members perhaps not accept you.
Hmm.
That happened for us. So that's not an issue for us. But it happens in a lot of relationships. I've learned that people will disown their relative or family member if they date out,
Hmm.
culturally or ethnically. And so those are some challenges. And societal challenges, that because while one of the questions I raise is love is blind, but society is not. How do people deal with that? When we're going into a restaurant, or even places to live. If you're looking for a place to live, lots of people don't want to rent to Black people, depending on the country or the state you live in. So how does that work when you're with a white person, right? That's challenging. Where my husband and I were going to travel or not travel, or where we would go in the States or not go, is dependent on the level of racism that is in
Hmm.
that area. So he may have the freedom to go more places throughout the world that I would not, because the racism is just can be lead to death,
Yeah.
from everything going on in the United States. So those are some issues as a Black and white in couple. But there are couples that, we interviewed a white man with an Asian woman, and she talked about some of the stereotypes that people talked about, or that come up, where people have the yellow fever, or they're just dating an Asian woman because they think she'll be passive and submissive, which isn't true.
Yeah.
Women are women, and we're all there's good people out there and there are bad people out there, and it has nothing to do with the color of someone's skin or the cultural background. Though society lives under the stories that people are based on the stereotypes and some of the systemic racism that that we may or may not have to deal with out there. So
And do you think, as my own perception is that to do, and it might be warped, as we were saying. I mean, I'm probably in my own little bubble, but it does feel like it's actually getting better in the sense that there's a lot more acceptance, and maybe with millennials coming through, and not having maybe been brought up in an environment where there was slavery. They're now actually they learn about it at school and stuff. But if I think of my nan, who's 94, she obviously didn't experience it, but it was very real in those days. So do you think it's actually going to get better?
I think that and now if you're just talking about black and white,
Mm.
and we're focused on in terms of the story of slavery for American Black people
Hmm.
and people who have been, enslaved and kidnapped and brought to lands that they did not come from. So today in America alone, there are more Black people in prison today than there were slaves.
Right.
their slavery may not be what we know of it, but that doesn't mean that it didn't morph into something much more systemic,
Hmm.
much more a way that people can feel okay about it, but it's still a form of enslavement because there are people sitting in prison for using marijuana and they're black. Yet at the same rates, white people will not be arrested or even looked at. So if you ask me if things were changing, I think that in some level they are changing because we are more conscious and aware of these things and we can see them more readily available with technology, and so we are forced to look at it, whereas
Hmm.
so many years we did not look at it while these systemic issues continued, and it became more sinister the way that black people, at least in America, are treated. And as a mother of black children and black grandchildren, I fear for their lives. I worry about whether or not they'll be able to move about in the same way in the world, but I also don't allow that fear to immobilize me or
Hmm.
immobilize them, let them live under the story that this is going to stop you from being whoever it is that you say that you want to be. Because we are in a time that we can push beyond that. However, I think that when you're talking about whether or not things have changed, well, just think of it this way. If you had two individuals in a race, you have a white man here on one side and a black woman on this side, and you have barbed wire fences, bombs on the black woman's side, and then you have this white man just walking 40, he's about a certain amount of feet ahead of her. Well, that's what you're talking about when you're talking about like some of these systemic issues
Hmm.
that people that are not black would not necessarily know.
Mm.
And you asked me earlier, is that perception, because it is the story that we're living under as black people? Absolutely not, because every day I get up and do what it is that I want to do.
Mm.
However, I know that many of the things that I go out into the world to do, you know, is we are judged based on our appearances and the stories that society has impressed upon those appearances. So you would have to say, is the world blind?
Mm.
And so, and then as long as the stories continue to perpetuate in society, those stories are changing. And I think a lot of us are adding more value and creating new stories. So yes, things are changing. However, it's slow,
Yeah.
depending on where you're on the spectrum where you are. And for me, it's like, oh man, I wish this would hurry up. I can't believe we're still talking about the same things that we were talking about when Dr. King was alive, that people are still going through this. This is
Mm.
insane. So,
Especially in this day and age. And I think, you're right. It is more the fact that we don't know anything about it. And I think it is, having been to the States recently a few times, I think I've seen it more out there, maybe even here. And as I say, sometimes we're all guilty of being in our own little bubble because it doesn't affect us. And if it isn't thrusted in front of us, we don't know it's happening.
right. I mean, and the same could be said, recently Nike used Colin Kaepernick, and you probably heard about who he is. You may not know all the details over here, but it's a big deal.
Hmm.
And there were people that were burning their Nike tennis shoes because Colin Kaepernick allegedly is going against our flag, which is not what he's standing for or kneeling for, rather, but kneeling for the injustices against people who are voiceless, particularly those people of color. Um, these individuals went out there and started to burn their shoes to stand against Nike. Now,
Mm.
standing against Nike for the sweatshops or abroad that are working to create these $200 tennis shoes? Are we standing against them then?
Mm.
No. Why? Because it doesn't directly affect us.
Yeah.
So, I get that. Like, so while being the story about being black may affect me, am I angry because it doesn't affect someone who is not black? I'm not.
Mm.
I'm going to be angry if, if, and in a society, I can't help but feel that way because I'm speaking from that space,
Yeah.
right? And but I'm also thinking about the person over there in the sweatshop. And so would I go out there and buy a pair of Nikes? No.
Mm.
Why? Because I know that people are in prison building these tennis shoes and over in sweatshops being paid little money per hour. But then if we start looking at these corporations, and I'm sidetracking off of relationships, but
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And obviously, you've just explained about how when you go traveling with Frank, there's certain areas that you wouldn't go uh, because of you being black and being white. Would you say that on a day-to-day basis there are added challenges to interracial relationships?
Added changes,
Added challenges.
challenges.
Yeah.
Um,
Like this, because to be fair, it's not something I even thought of, that you wouldn't go to certain places because it'd be okay to go, but you wouldn't. I hadn't thought of that.
want to go to the Blackfoot Reservation,
Hmm.
which is part of my ancestral background. However, it's in a part of America that, with what's going on in America right now, if we as even if I by myself or with another black person tried to drive through this place, I might be physically hurt.
Right.
So do that, and that's sad because that's part of who I am, where I
Hmm.
come from, and I can't go there. When we went to visit South Africa, everybody told us how wonderful South Africa was. We were planning on staying in South Africa for a month. Well, first, we couldn't even find lodging there because people on Airbnb wouldn't wouldn't rent their homes to us because I'm black. They
Hmm.
wouldn't. And so that was one challenge. The second challenge we came in face to face with when we got there were, oh my God, while no one directly came up to us and did anything, it was very up of like out in the open that
Mm.
they did not like that. And I'm talking on both sides.
Mm.
We from both sides. It was scary. We left in a week. We did not stay. We didn't
Right.
go out much as we would have liked to in South Africa. We were in Tanzania, we were in Senegal, we were in Kenya, we went to 7 different countries in Africa, and didn't have that. But in South Africa, it was very scary. In other parts of Africa, I noticed that people automatically assume that I must be like with this individual because he was white, and my life must be like so much better because of being with a white man. It was very weird. And then I noticed, like here in England, while I didn't get it from white Brits, I
Hmm.
got it from black Brits.
Okay.
That here. So it's weird. Like you don't know when it's gonna be a problem because you don't think it's a problem at all. Just being
Yeah.
with somebody and until it's thrown in your face, like that's a problem. Like a man yelled at me and Frank, and he called me all kind. This black man, he says, I can't even repeat it on your show. It was
Mm.
scary, disgusting, and he was just yelling at me, saying all types of profanity for me being with this white man. So
Yeah, that's quite frightening, really. So obviously, you've got your book coming out, um, giving
yeah,
advice on interracial, sorry, relationships, marriages. So for someone listening today, and to like round this up, what advice would you give them?
oh, the advice that I would give anybody interested in dating into someone out of their race or culture would be to close your eyes and think about um, all the components of love, and think about all the attributes of love, and then ask yourself if it has a color on it, because I don't think love has a color. Love, your heart loves who you love, and follow what your values, your core beliefs and those things, and lead with your heart. Think about, anyway, in if even if you were in a relationship with somebody that looks just like you, you're still going to have challenges because that's the world we live in. It could be because you're Protestant and they're Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Both look white. It could be because you both are, one person is thin and one person is not thin, right? It could be because somebody doesn't like blondes. I mean, there's always going to be prejudices out there. So if you let society dictate who your heart loves, you'll be alone. So let it go. That's just a different type of challenge. Every relationship has challenges. It doesn't matter what.
Well, it's been really interesting and eye-opening. So thank you so much. That is it for today. So if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe and leave us a review and then come back next week. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me, Sophie.
No worries.